Welcome to the channel. We're excited to explore ideas that shaped Western civilization and the world in this series. Our goal is a family-friendly vibe, though sensitive topics might pop up. As such, viewer discretion is advised. When guest speakers join us, we'll ask them to keep in line with our standards, but we can't promise that. Our aim is to break down concepts clearly and concisely without oversimplifying, and focus on discussion of ideas, not necessarily the promotion of them. Satire, nuance, and devil's advocate moments might arise, so context matters. The channel and its team don't officially back any views that are discussed. We'll adapt as we go, and we'd love your civil, constructive input. Check descriptions and comments for info. Our goal, to be open-minded, evolving, and exploratory. Thrilled to have you here.
All right, welcome everyone. This is book 2. We're starting off book 2 today of Plato's Republic. Um, if this is your first time joining us, this is our 6th installment of this series. We just finished book 1, and so if you haven't read through those or listened to those videos, I'd recommend that you go back and listen to those. Although at the same time, we're glad to have you here. But yeah, with that, I can start off reading for us, and then uh, also Caleb, if you have any thoughts or comments, please feel free to interrupt. Uh, so he continues to say, with these words, I was thinking that I had made an end of the discussion, but the end, in truth, proved to be only a beginning for Glaucon, who is always the most pugnacious of men, who was dissatisfied at Thrasymachus's retirement. He wanted to have the battle out. So he said to me, Socrates, do you wish really to persuade us, or only to seem to have persuaded us, that to be just is always better than to be unjust? Uh, to which Socrates says, I should wish really to persuade you. I replied, if I could. Then you really have not succeeded. Let me ask you now, how would you arrange goods? Are there not some which we welcome for their own sakes and independently of their consequences, as, for example, harmless pleasures and enjoyments which delight us at the time, although nothing follows from them? I agree in thinking that there is such a class, I replied. Is there not a second class of goods such as knowledge, sight, health, which are desirable not only in themselves, but also for their results? Certainly. Um, I'm gonna pause right there, uh, just for a bit. I uh, I kind of disagree with that first formulation in some ways, because I feel like things like enjoyment could have, like, regardless of what they are, have some effect or another. Uh, like in Spanish, how to like pay or like in English even, like to pay attention implies some sort of exchange of something for attention, or something for your attention. Um, so I kind of disagree with that first formulation that some goods, as they call them, are like just for the sake of them, if that makes sense.
I don't think that's what he's saying. In
Oh,
fact, he's saying that they are welcomed for their own sake.
oh, I guess independent of their consequences. That's right. That's true.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it depends on, I guess it depends on what you mean by the wording, because he relates consequences to the things that follow from them. So you might say the consequence of an enjoyable activity is the pleasure and enjoyment, but the pleasure and enjoyment is what they're talking about as the good, and nothing is following from that. Like, having a good time doesn't do you good in the long run. It doesn't change anything about your life. It doesn't provide anything for you. Like, it's, enjoying yourself is, yeah, it is considered the good itself, and it doesn't do anything for you.
Hmm. Interesting. I guess that is true. Depends on what is meant in a way, or like what how they use the words. So yeah, that's fair. uh, I guess I kind of completely just blew past the the phrasing of regardless of the consequences. I'm trying to
Mhm.
find what how he phrased it exactly, but
Yeah, independently of their consequences.
yes, yeah, I guess I kind of completely blew past that phrase, which totally changes the implications.
Yeah.
Uh, good catch.
I did notice, yeah, he does say, as an example, harmless pleasures and enjoyments. Um, and by saying it harmless, he kind of avoids maybe the complicating factors of, like, well, what about things that you enjoy that maybe aren't good for you? Like
Mm,
maybe toxic behaviors, or, bullying people, or doing drugs, or, some reckless behaviors, or hedonism. Those could certainly be pleasures and enjoyments, but they wouldn't be harmless. So he's referring to harmless pleasures and enjoyments as an example of good
mm.
in this category of good.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, he says, uh, is there not also the second class of goods, such as knowledge, sight, health, and which are desirable not only in themselves but also for their results? Certainly, I said. And would you not recognize a third class, such as gymnastic and the care of the sick and the physician's art? Also, the various ways of money making, going back to the art of uh, payment, um, as we talked about the other day. These do us good, but we regard them as disagreeable, and no one would choose them for their own sakes, but only for the sake of the reward or result which flows from them. There is this third class also. Uh, but why do you ask? Because I want to know in which of the three classes you would place justice. In the highest class, I replied. Among these goods, which he who would be happy desires both for their own sake and for the sake of the results. Then
Mm.
the many are of another mind. Uh, they think that justice is to be reckoned in the troublesome class among goods which are to be pursued for the sake of rewards and of uh, reputation, but in themselves are disagreeable and rather to be avoided. I know, I said,
Mm.
that there is this manner of thinking, and this was the thesis which Thrasymachus was maintaining just now when he censured justice and praised injustice. But I am too stupid to be convinced of him by him.
I wonder if that's just uh like what's the word, denigrating, or if maybe
Self-deprecation.
stupid is translated as maybe a little different use than too stupid. Uh, so I'm having a hard time keeping track of who's talking, but one person says that justice would be for its own sake and the sake of results, and the other person thinks that most people would consider justice troublesome and only pursued for the sake of reward or the consequences. And I like how working out is in the list of troublesome things. Like, yeah, we just do it for the rewards. It's the disagreeable.
Yeah, so Glaucon was the one to make the claim that justice was troublesome.
Interesting. So yeah, I guess they're thinking of Glaucon. They're thinking of justice as sort of the social contract used for benefit. Whereas I would maybe expect them to have justice as sort of the ideal that is in the first class, that is good for itself, like it's something that you ought to pursue, but it is not necessarily having good consequences. Because sometimes doing the right thing is hard and, doesn't always help you. I mean, it often does, but sometimes, as Thrasymachus would say, sometimes being in the just gives you a disadvantage, or you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say I kind of see where they're coming from, putting it in sort of uh, the economic class, because of that, uh, because of the concept of uh, an exchange, if that makes sense, where something is done and then something uh, is paid because
Mhm.
something is good
Mm.
or
Oh,
bad.
right. Like how earlier at the very beginning of the first book, justice was like doing right by others and like paying what was due and handling money correctly and like that kind of thing.
Yes, going back to I can't remember which day we read uh, about the art of payment and Thrasymachus's um, attempt at trying to claim that injustice was wise, uh,
Hmm.
and that justice was kind of naive and foolish. Um, I wonder if they are kind of still within that mindset of justice being a sort of quid pro quo sort of thing, where in order to enact justice, um, there has to be some sort of either deliberate exchange for an action or a deliberate lack of exchange in the sense of like, extending mercy, uh, as we kind of discussed the other day. I can't remember which recording it was. I think it was over the course of maybe two of them. But I think there is this aspect of uh, justice having a sort of um, economic connotation to it, where there is this exchange of uh, justice for like doing good to those who do good and bad to those who do evil. Uh,
Like
anyways,
it's almost about people having what they should have rather than like doing what they should do, or
I like
do
that
what they should
formulation.
do in making people have what they have. Hmm.
Yeah, because Glaucon and Thrasymachus almost seem to think that justice is almost not a good thing. Are you getting that sense too, or am I just way off base?
Um, Certainly a thing with downsides. Like they reckon that the many, so I guess the prevailing opinion is that justice is in the troublesome class that are disagreeable. uh yeah, I don't know. Here, let me reread it a little bit, and I'll kind of overlap my reading.
For sure.
So, and would you not recognize a third class, such as gymnastic and the care of the sick and the physician's art, also the various ways of money making? These do us good, but we regard them as disagreeable, and no one would choose them for their own sakes, but only for the sake of some reward or result which flows from them. There is, I said, this third class also, but why do you ask? Because I want to know in which of the three classes you would place justice. In the highest class, I replied, among those goods which he who would be happy desires both for their own sake and for the sake of their results. Then the many are of another mind. They think that justice is to be reckoned in the troublesome class, among goods which are to be pursued for the sake of rewards and of reputation, but in themselves are disagreeable and rather to be avoided. I know, I said, that this is their manner of thinking, and that this was the thesis which Thrasymachus was maintaining just now, when he censured justice and praised injustice. But I am too stupid to be convinced by him. I wish, he said, that you would hear me as well as him, and then I shall see whether you and I agree. For Thrasymachus seems to me like a snake, to have been charmed by your voice sooner than he ought to have been. But to my mind the nature of justice and injustice have not yet been made clear. Setting aside their rewards and results, I want to know what they are in themselves, and how they inwardly work in the soul. If you please, then, I will revive the argument of Thrasymachus, and first I will speak of the nature and origin of justice according to the common view of them. Secondly, I will show that all men who practice justice do so against their will, of necessity, but not as a good. And thirdly, I will argue that there is reason in this view, for the life of the unjust is after all better far than the life of the just, if what they say is true, Socrates, since I myself am not of their opinion. But still I acknowledge that I am perplexed when I hear the voices of Thrasymachus and myriads of others dinning in my ears, and on the other hand, I have never yet heard the superiority of justice to injustice maintained by anyone in a satisfactory way. I want to hear justice praised in respect of itself, then I shall be satisfied, and you are the person from whom I think that I am most likely to hear this, and therefore I will praise the unjust life to the utmost of my power, and my manner of speaking will indicate the manner in which I desire to hear you too praising justice and censuring injustice. Will you say whether you approve of my proposal? Hmm. So he's kind of playing, maybe not quite devil's advocate, but kind of speaking the common perspective as justice as sort of a um, I guess necessary evil would be the phrase we would use. But I guess
Mhm.
in this case it's a necessary good or necessary practicality, something like that.
Yeah, I think necessary evil is almost kind of fitting, uh, because they seem to have such a almost disdain for it because they want some sort of advocation for it that is not, I guess, consequentialist or utilitarian in nature. Um,
Yeah.
they want some sort of advocation for it that's of itself rather than, I guess, what it
Yeah.
could create. If that, yeah. Um,
Yeah. Well, they put working out and caring for the sick in that same category, so it's not quite evil. It's just necessary, disagreeable thing.
true, true.
It's a necessary thing that sucks.
'Cause at the same time, this generate or this, I guess, group of philosophers did advocate for, um, I guess, su- uh, not superiority, but like greatness in both physical, mental, and moral means. And so it does make sense
Mm.
that they would kind of combine the two into its own class, so to speak, or the many into their own class, being like the art of physicianship, gymnastics, and uh, justice.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, like all those different categories of like mental, physical, social things, spiritual, all of those belong in, good or maybe not good. Like, yeah.
I guess I was thinking more along the lines of combining them in the sense that uh, achieving like physical greatness is difficult. Achieving mental greatness is difficult, and achieving like moral greatness, I guess, to continue the train of thought is also difficult.
Oh,
Like
yes.
it's easy to go with the flow, whether that's mentally, physically, or morally. But that doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
mean that there's growth that goes along with that. You
Hmm.
know?
It's like all three of those categories have good ideals in them uh, toward which to strive, but goods that are of the class of troublesome goods that are hard and disagreeable and
Exactly.
take great
Yeah.
effort to attain.
Mhm. So I guess I wonder if what Socrates is trying to get at is whether there is a good in like an inherent good regardless or without respect to the consequences or the results of the things in these actions like gymnastics, working out, or learning, or uh, exercising morality muscles, I guess, to stick with the train of thought. I don't know, the metaphor. I kind of lost the line there toward the end, but do you follow what I'm trying to get
Uh, I followed it for a bit. Then I
at?
was trying to remember the three category, so the three classes and the order, which ones are which. Okay, so let's see. The first one is for their own sake, independent of consequence. The second class is its own sake and for the results. And the third one is just for the results.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, if you're ready, I'll read a little bit more, and then we can swap back.
Sure, maybe at the end of the paragraph.
I'll do the end of the big paragraph. So will you say whether you approve of my proposal? Indeed I do. Nor can I imagine any theme about which a man of sense would oftener wish to converse. I am delighted, he replied, to hear you say so, and shall begin by speaking, as I proposed, of the nature and origin of justice. They say that to do injustice is by nature good, to suffer injustice evil, but that the evil is greater than the good. And so when men have both done and suffered injustice, and have had experience of both, not being able to avoid the one and obtain the other, they think that they had better agree among themselves to have neither. Hence there arise laws and mutual covenants. And that which is ordained by law is termed by them lawful and just. This they affirm to be the origin and nature of justice. It is a mean or compromise between the best of all, which is to do injustice and not be punished, and the worst of all, which is to suffer injustice without the power of retaliation. And justice, being at a middle point between the two, is tolerated not as a good, but as the lesser evil, and honored by reason of the inability of men to do injustice. For no man who is worthy to be called a man would ever submit to such an agreement if he were able to resist. He would be mad if he did. Such is the received account, Socrates, of the nature and origin of justice. That is interesting.
So in short, he's proposing that, or Glaucon is proposing to Socrates that justice, that the origin of justice, as he puts it, is basically just a social contract
Mm-hmm.
where people enact laws
Yeah.
to mitigate injustice or the ability to practice injustice.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, so I guess the ideal of justice is the legal restriction from injustice, so that you cannot do or suffer injustice, because it is considered better to have neither than to both do and suffer injustice. So, in essence, a just society is better off than an unjust or unjust one. I don't like how the adjective form is different than the noun form.
Un-
Injustice and unjust.
Unjustice.
Who made English, man?
Well, you see, some would propose that it's a group of three or more languages on each other's shoulders in a giant trench coat
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's pretty
who
much the shape of it.
who find various languages and corner them in alleyways and take their loose grammar.
Yeah, and there's spelling rules.
Ugh,
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
hope this
People give English a
conversation
hard
doesn't.
time. Yeah, people give English a hard time for having crazy spelling, but it's not fair because it doesn't have a spelling. It has the spelling of every language it's drawn from. So it's an unfair judgment.
I hope this conversation doesn't just devolve into a critique of English.
Yes, let us not get too distracted. So yeah,
Just
I don't know. Are we ready to keep reading, or do you have more thoughts on this formulation of justice?
I kind of want to see where he's going with this,
Okay.
or I guess continue to see where he's going with this to kind of form a more, um, I guess, concrete uh, conception of what he's trying to get at. Because I would, I think a number of times we've kind of uh, guessed at what he's trying to get at, and then he sort of clarifies.
Hmm.
Although that could just be the fact that we're reading an English rendition of ancient Greek.
Yeah. And I don't think either of us have done any like reading beforehand of like the summaries or the interpretations. Like we're just trying to get our own fresh view of it. So,
Exactly,
well,
yeah, and,
yeah.
the only, I guess, exposure I've had to this document is, like, TED Talks and things that mention, like, bits and pieces. Uh, like, I
Hmm.
recognize a couple names coming up in this paragraph that I'm about to read, but besides that, I'm, very much a novice. So, forgive my, audience, forgive my lack of understanding of anything. I swear I
Oh.
can read and speak English.
And good luck also with your pronunciation of these names, I see.
Amen
All
to
right,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I can continue. He goes on to say, now that those who practice justice do so involuntarily, and because they have not the power to be unjust, will best appear if we imagine something of its kind. Having bo- having given both to the just and the unjust power to do what they will, let us watch and see whither desire will lead them. Then we shall discover in the very act the just and unjust man to be proceeding along the same road, following their interest, which all natures deem to be their good, and only diverted into the path of justice by the force of law. Interesting. The liberty which we are supposing may be completely given them in the form of such a power as is said to have been possessed by Gyges, the ancestor of Croesus the Lydian. According to the tradition, Gyges was a shepherd in the service of the king of Lydia. There was a great storm, and an earthquake made an opening in the earth, and at the place where he was feeding his flock. Amazed at the sight, he descended into the opening, where, among the marvels, he beheld a hollow brazen horse, having doors, at which he stooping and looking in, saw a dead body of stature, as appeared to him, more than human, and having nothing on but a gold ring, and this he took from the finger of the dead, and reascended. Now the shepherds met together, according to custom, that they might send their monthly report about the flocks to the king. Into their assembly he came, having the ring on his finger, and he was sitting among them, and he chanced to turn the collet of the ring in his hand, when instantly he became invisible to the rest of the company, and they began to speak of him as if he were no longer present. So basically, the One Ring. Uh, I recognize this myth that they're referring to, and I think there's a lot of parallels between this story and that one. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, he goes on to say he was astonished at this, and again touching the ring, he turned the collet outwards and reappeared. He made several trials of the ring, and always with the um, same result. When he turned the collet inwards, he became invisible. When he went outwards, he reappeared. Whereupon he contrived to be chosen one of the messengers who was sent to the court. Where as soon as he arrived, he seduced the queen. Oh boy! And with her help conspired against the king and slew him and took the kingdom. Suppose now that there were two such magic rings, and the just put on one of them, and the unjust the other. No man can be imagined of such an iron nature that he would stand fast injustice. Injustice. No man would keep his hands off what was not his own when he could safely take what he liked out of the market, and go into houses and lie with any one at his pleasure, or kill or release from prison whom he would. And in all respects be like a god among men. Then these actions of the just would be as the actions of the unjust. They would both come at last of the same point. And this way we may truly affirm to be a great proof that a man is just, not willingly, or because he thinks that justice in any good is any good to him individually, but of necessity. For wherever any one thinks that he can safely be unjust, there he is unjust. For all men believe in their hearts that injustice is far more profitable to the individual than justice. And he who argues, as I have been supposing, will say that they are right. If you would imagine anyone obtaining this power of becoming invisible and never doing uh, any wrong or touching what was another's, he would be thought to be the lookers on to be most wretched idiot, although they would praise him to one another's faces and keep up appearances with one another from a fear that they too might suffer injustice. Enough of this.
Well, so basically, people are only just because it is enforced by law, and no one would have the moral character to refrain from injustice without consequences. Or if they did, they would be considered an idiot.
And I think that generally tracks in like a both a secular and a religious view. I guess in the
Mm,
Judeo-Christian concept of man's existence, that tracks the fact that this is the fallen world, um, and without turning uh, a to the higher power, God, um, we're unable to be more just, I guess. Um,
mhm. Well, yeah, I do feel like there are quite a few people who would, choose the path of justice, who would choose to not take advantage of a situation if it was wrong without fear of the consequences motivating them to do so. Like I do think there are people who would have the integrity to, you know, be good, who'd have integrity.
sure.
Um, but I do think the general attitude is pretty prevalent, even what's the word for like everywhere? Ubiquitous?
Ubiquitous. Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that is a pretty ubiquitous sentiment, I would say. It's interesting, he says that the people would praise him to one another's faces and keep up appearances from a fear that they too might suffer injustice. So it's like we would profess the ideal of justice in order to protect ourselves. Like, oh, good, like what? Good people don't suffer injustice or something? Or I don't know. I'm
Um,
that piques my interest. I'm not quite sure what he's getting at the end.
Yeah, would you read through that section again? I think he might be referring to, I guess, uh, or being complimentary to the person with the ring.
Hmm. Well, I'm reading it as, you know, anyone who could get away with it would try to get away with it, and they would everyone would think that as someone who doesn't take advantage of a situation is an idiot. They would praise him to other people, so everyone would agree that he's good and would speak highly of him with the ideal of justice, even as they say he's an idiot.
Mm,
And they would do that, I guess, to save face. Like, I guess there I the thing that makes the most sense is the idea of social rejection. Like, oh, no one wants to be the one to admit that they would do the same injustice in that situation and that they think he's an idiot. No one wants to be seen with that moral failing.
mhm.
But they phrase it as they keep up appearances from a fear that they too might suffer injustice. And I'm not sure if like the social rejection angle is what he means by that or not.
So yeah, the whole sentence says, um, if you could imagine anyone obtaining this power of becoming invisible and never doing any wrong or touching what was another's, he would be thought by the lookers on to be the most wretched idiot, although they would praise him to one another's faces and keep up appearances with one another from a fear that they too might suffer injustice. Huh. I wonder if
Mhm.
I wonder.
Like, yeah. Only an idiot wouldn't take advantage of invisibility.
I wonder if they're kind of thinking that uh, insulting the person who doesn't, or who either does good with the ring of invisibility
Oh.
or doesn't do evil would maybe uh, uh, I guess disparage or injure the one who insults.
Mm. Like, if you called them an idiot to their face, they would target you.
Yes, yes.
Interesting. Well, maybe. I mean, I feel like if someone was invisible and didn't take advantage of it, I'm not sure that, I don't know, like, would they target people who called him an idiot for doing so? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's like if they are not the sort who would do injustice for their own good, would they do injustice against someone else for insulting them? Or I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it as like a realistic scenario, but
Or I mean, maybe even the fear is of others who do not have the ring.
ah, oh, like
Like,
other people would stand up for him
no,
or kind
no,
of defend him on his behalf.
like say, person two steals the ring, and person one and three kind of say to each other, that person two is such a morally upstanding person, and then person one says to person three, actually, I kind of disagree. If I was in person two's shoes, then I would like steal and commit murder and all this crazy stuff, but I don't, so I wouldn't. And then I wonder if they're proposing that the other person in this scenario would kind of, uh, out of fear of this hypothetical situation, eh, do something unjust to the person saying, "I would do this unjust thing if I had the ring."
Uh, well, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound like they're talking about themselves at all. They're just talking about the person who didn't take advantage of the situation.
Oh,
Like, if someone says, yeah, if someone says, "Oh, that guy is upstanding, he's a good guy," instead of saying, "That guy's an idiot for not taking advantage of the situation," I feel like the main protection that would give them from injustice would be like social retaliation from um what's the word? Like I don't know, like ostracism, like being ostracized for, I guess, saying what everyone's thinking. But that's just,
yeah, no, I think
yeah,
we agree with each other. Uh, I think the problem is that we're talking past each other. 'Cause I think, uh, the people in the group talking about the man with the ring would be afraid to say that he's an idiot for not doing bad things with the ring, or, like, I guess, quote, unquote, "socially constructed," unquote, end quote, "bad things" with the ring, uh, because then the other members of the group would be, incentivized to essentially either kick out or, prevent the person who says that the person is an idiot who has the ring,
hmm
from being able to do any further injustice, any concrete injustice, so to speak. What are your thoughts on that?
uh I agreed until the last um clause of your sentence. I didn't follow the grammatically what you were saying. It's like I
Um,
agree they would, yeah, they would kick out someone. Yeah, yeah, let's just move on.
yeah, feel free to debate in the comments
Oh,
what you think about this section. Uh, hopefully,
I don't know what they mean by suffer injustice from who or what sort. That's that's the long story short. I don't know.
the only thing I know is that I know nothing. Right. Do you want to continue uh, from the beginning of this next paragraph?
Now, if we are to form a real judgment of the life of the just and unjust, we must isolate them. There is no other way. And how is the isolation to be effected? I answer, let the unjust man be entirely unjust, and the just man entirely just. Nothing is to be taken away from either of them, and both are to be perfectly furnished for the work of their respective lives. First, let the unjust be like other distinguished masters of craft, like the skillful pilot or physician, who knows intuitively his own powers and keeps within their limits, and who, if he fails at any point, is able to recover himself. So let the unjust make his unjust attempts in the right way, and lie hidden if he means to be great in his injustice. He who is found out is nobody. For the highest reach of injustice is to be deemed just when you are not. Therefore I say that in the perfectly unjust man, we must assume the most perfect injustice. There is to be no deduction, but we must allow him, while doing the most unjust acts, to have acquired the greatest reputation for justice. If you have taken a false step, he must be able to recover himself. He must be one who can speak with effect if any of his deeds come to light, and who can force his way where force is required by his courage and strength, and command of money and friends. And at his side let us place the just man, in his nobleness and simplicity, wishing, as Aeschylus said, to be and not to seem good. There must be no seeming, for if he seem to be just, he will be honored and rewarded. And then we shall not know whether he is just for the sake of justice or for the sake of honors and rewards. Therefore, let him be clothed in justice only, and have no other covering. And he must be imagined in a state of life the opposite of the former. Let him be the best of men, and let him be thought the worst. Then he will have been put to the proof, and we shall see whether he will be affected by the fear of infamy and its consequences. And let him continue thus to the hour of death, being just and seeming to be unjust. When both have reached the uttermost extreme, the one of justice and the other of injustice, let judgment be given which of them is the happier of the two.
It seems like they would almost say that non quid pro quo like favors or like just acts of service would be considered injustice, you know? Because
Mm,
that's like actions that aren't necessarily deserved.
mm, maybe.
Hmm.
Well, I feel like I've kind of lost the train of the conversation. I forgot why they're going into this, but it's like, yeah, because he's having the just seem unjust and the unjust seem just, and basically giving all the material goods to the unjust. Seems a little unfair.
Well,
And
well,
then
I thought
nothing to the
from
just.
I thought from I guess my understanding of what you're reading, I thought they both started with the same amount of like things, like that they were both treated fairly, but the unjust was supposed to um, act as unjustly as possible without being caught,
Well, he says both to be perfectly furnished for the work of their respective lives. So
which I think.
I took that to mean not that they are both given like equal stuff, but that they both have the tools for their approaches. So like the criminal is a good con man, it has good tools and has good, people who can help him in his injustice. Like he is the perfectly unjust scenario. Whereas the just man, it doesn't really say much of what he has, but he would have whatever is required or involved in being just.
Mhm. But I think at the same time they're given like sufficient for like goods sufficient for what they need, like for their needs,
Hmm.
like whether that be clothes or like tools for whichever craft they participate in well, whether that's being a physician or a boats person, boatsman, equestrian, uh, I want to say horse person, but that's a centaur. Uh, like equestrian person, uh, gymnast, uh, like the tools that would set them up for doing their part well, and then the unjust would uh, have to act as unjustly as possible. Uh, but if he's caught,
Mm.
then he has to be able to backtrack and just justify his injustice. Am I reading that right? Or I guess are we reading it the same? I should say.
I don't know. I mean, towards the beginning, it does say nothing is to be taken away from either of them, but then he says like, "Oh, let this be the way that it is." And I'm not sure if he's still like setting up the hypothetical or if he's claiming that that would be the ultimate conclusion. Like, oh, let the unjust man, have this stuff and let him work this way, and if this happens, let him be able to get his way out of it and stuff. Like, is that I don't know if that's supposed to be the setup of the hypothetical or the conclusion of the hypothetical, because he doesn't
Oh,
say like, oh, this is what would happen. It's just like, let this be the case, and
I
I don't
guess
know.
I
Yeah.
can clarify according to my own understanding. I think the outcome is at the end of that paragraph that you finished, where he says, like, in the end, we'll see which of the two is happier. Which I think the measure of happiness is the goal of
Okay.
the experiment.
So all of the main paragraph was the setup, and then the conclusion is let's see which one is happier, and the happiness is the key variable, the
Is
key
the
result.
the dependent variable? Yes.
Hmm. Okay.
I guess how they get to happiness eludes me, which sounds
Hmm.
depressing.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the answer could go either way. I'm curious to see which one they say, but certainly they say money doesn't buy happiness, but it can buy a lot of things that can make you happy.
There's
And
a
then
country song with that premise. Yeah.
yeah, and there's also a quote, something like, some people are so poor all they have is money.
Mm.
And
Yeah, yeah,
there's a
there's that.
lot of rich people who are not very happy. They drown themselves in hedonism and drugs, and they have everything, and then it just doesn't make them happy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the entire premise of that country song that I was referencing is one of the lines is money can't buy everything, but it can buy me a boat. Like money might not be able to buy happiness, but I can have fun on something that money can buy, or using
Yeah,
something money can buy.
yeah. So I guess we'll see how they're thinking about happiness in the next area.
Okay. Would you like me to continue?
Yeah,
You ended at this sentence about which is the happier of the two, correct?
yeah.
I kind of lost my place. Okay, so Socrates, yeah, continues. He says, "Heavens, my dear Glaucon," I said, "how energetically you polished them up for the decision, first one and then the other, as if they were two statues." "I did my best," he said, "and now that we know what they are, what they are like, there is no difficulty in tracing out the sort of life which awaits either of them. Uh, this I will proceed to describe, but as you may think in the description a little too coarse. I ask you to suppose, Socrates, that the words which follow are not mine. Let me put them into the mouths of the eulogists of injustice. They will tell you that the just man who is thought unjust will be scourged, racked, and bound, will have his eyes burnt out, and at last, after suffering every kind of evil, he will be impaled. Then he will understand that he ought to seem only, and not to be, just. The words of I Aeschylus, I don't even know how to say that, uh, may be more truly spoken of the unjust than the just. For the unjust is pursuing a reality. He does not live with a view to appearances. He wants to be really unjust and not to seem only. His mind has a soil deep and fertile, out of which spring his prudent counsels. In the first place, he is thought just, therefore bears rule in the city. He can marry whom he will, and give in marriage to whom he will. Also, he can trade and deal where he likes, and always give his own advantage, because he has no misgivings about injustice. And at every contest, whether in public or private, he gets the better of his antagonists, and gains their expense, and is rich. And out of his gains he can benefit his friends, and harm his enemies. Moreover, he can offer sacrifices and dedicate gifts to the gods abundantly and magnificently, and can honor the gods or any man whom he wants to honor in a far better style than the just. And therefore he is likely to be dearer than any are to the gods. And thus, Socrates, gods and men are said to unite in making the life of the unjust better than the life of the just. Personally, I got
Yeah,
kind of lost there.
yeah. Well, there's a lot in there. I thought it was kind of funny. This antagonist, this unjust person, would be able to, out of his gains, benefit his friends and harm his enemies, which was one of the first ideas of justice in book one. So it's kind of
Yeah, I
funny.
caught on to that too. Uh,
Yeah.
and I would like to study out further and maybe have a conversation on in the future this idea of like doing versus seeming, you know,
Yeah.
that Glaucon
Yeah.
proposes.
Yeah. And also, I don't know, it's interesting they're taking a very practical approach to it, but then the topic, good and evil, justice and injustice are sort of abstract ideals, even if they are very practical ideals in their mind. So they say, they'll have whether you should do good or evil, but then good or evil is done to you, and that's outside of your morality. That's others. Uh, it makes me think of how he described that men would want to do injustice but not suffer injustice. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah,
a
with
lot to
that,
think
I
about.
guess what do you all think? Is is this question even answerable in the way that they are, I guess, trying to make it out to be? Uh, is Glaucon right? Um, I don't know. Uh, yeah,
I guess,
let us know.
yeah.
Oh,
Before
go
we
ahead.
wrap up, I do want to say I feel like part of why his formulation seems so stark. I mean, obviously he's trying to make them stark to give a point, but I think it's kind of improper because of how starkly he formulated it, that the unjust being the seeming just and the just seeming unjust at such an absolute way, because they're thinking very much in practical terms, the practical effects of things. But in real life, in practical life, I would say it's much more common and much more thoroughly perceived as a unjust person seeming just than a just person seeming unjust. Like, I would say there are many more people who are much more convincing as an unjust person seeming just, and there are a lot fewer people a lot less thoroughly convincing as a just person seeming unjust. And so I think his formulation is not true to reality, so I'm not sure how, I guess, valid it should be as a point of argument.
Yeah,
Like of course,
I would agree.
dishonest
Yeah,
people will lie, and unjust people can seem just, especially if they are skilled and well equipped, like he's saying. But just people, I mean, just people can find a way, just people can be seen and recognized to be just, and the impact of them being seen as unjust is kind of limited. I mean, like, people can seem just if they want to, and a just person would, I think, a lot more than he's giving credit for.
yeah, which I think that sentiment kind of fits along with a concept that was brought up in book one, that of justice being, quote, sublime simplicity and injustice being malignity, where I think under that formulation, I think they would agree that the unjust would be considered more wise, although I feel like a better word for it would be maybe clever. Um,
Mhm. I mean,
because as you're
yeah,
saying, like a a so-called unjust person can give the appearance of being just through like sophistry or flat out deception, uh, where a just person might not necessarily, like, if they're completely unjustly presented, it would be difficult, I think, to change that perception.
yeah, could be. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'll just make this quick comment and then we can wrap it up. But that also made me think of the idea of people are innocent until proven guilty. And
Mm.
that's like taken for granted now in like the modern world. But apparently that has not been so common of a principle throughout history.
Oh,
Uh,
mm.
sorry?
Oh, I guess I was just thinking on what you were saying. Given this platform, that's probably a unwise thing to do. Uh, have such dead air, but
Oh, that's all right. I just heard, I just wasn't sure if you were going, or if maybe your mic wasn't picking up.
yeah, I'm just thinking. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a newer formulation. I'm glad that it is a thing
Yeah.
nowadays. Not that I
Or
have
at
a need
least,
for it necessarily, but
yeah, at least it's a newer fundamental universal formulation. Like, I'm sure it has been around longer than I expect, but um, like having it as like the operating standard, I think is a newer thing.
mm,
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good place to wrap up. I think next time we should reread those paragraphs and see what we think again.
definitely. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a solid place to leave off, and I'll end the recording there. Join us next time when we continue Book 2 of Plato's. Wow, I'm slurring. Book 2 of Plato's Republic.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us through today's exploration. If this resonated with you, please subscribe, like the video, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. Check the description and pinned comment for extra resources. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you in the next one.